Hi, I'm Femi OK. Today on the stream, we are looking at Sudan's transition to democracy. Earlier on this week, the power-sharing agreement between civilians and the military ended abruptly. Now General Abdel-Fattah al-Burhan is in charge. If you're on YouTube right now, you can be part of our discussion. What would you like to know about the military coup? What would you like to share about the military coup? The comment section is right here. Be part of today's programme. Earlier on today, I asked Hiba Morgan, she's Al Jazeera's correspondent who's currently in Khartoum in Sudan. I asked her, can you show us an idea of what it is like to be in Khartoum right now, just a day or two after a military coup? She's standing in the middle of the street. The camera person is standing in the middle of the street, in the middle of the day, in the middle of the week. It gives you some indication as to things aren't quite normal. Here's what Hiba told us.
Now we're on one of the streets that normally around this time of the day, around mid-afternoon, is very busy with all the shops open. But right now it's the complete opposite. Many business owners say that they're not sure what impact the military takeover will have on Sudan's economy.
So that is Khartoum a few hours ago. Hello, Hiba. So good to have you. Thanks for being part of our programme. And Salma, please introduce yourself to our stream audience. Tell them who you are and what you do.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me. My name is Salma Abdullah. I'm a Sudanese political scientist and researcher who is currently based in Norway.
So, Salma, welcome. Hiba, good to see you. For the last couple of days, you've been trying to help us understand on Al Jazeera News what is going on. What triggered what seemed to me to be quite an abrupt change from this power-sharing agreement to just the military in power, Hiba?
Well, I think the military basically found an opportunity to take over from the civilians because of the divisions that were happening. But I think if we look closely, because I've been following the story from the very beginning, when people were protesting against Bashir and when the Force of Freedom and Change Coalition were negotiating this power-sharing agreement, you could see that there were differences between the armed groups who are in the coalition and the civilian political parties. And I think this division and the difference between them just simply grew wider and wider, and the military took an opportunity knowing that when they come to power and when they sign that power sharing agreement, they'll be able to turn that their interest. And I think that's basically what but even with all the information that we had, the knowledge and following up the story from the very beginning, I think the fact that, prior to this military takeover, there was a presidential palace sit-in where some armed groups and some opposition parties were actually asked to dissolve the government. For me, that was a bit of a shock. Again, these are people who've always claimed that they wanted Sudan's progress. They want to see transition to democracy. That was led by Omar al-Bashir for 30 years. He's a military general. And I just couldn't wrap my head around the fact that, you've got political parties who were and armed groups who once upon a time fought the military, the Sudanese military, right? And now here they are staging a sit-in, demanding that same military that they once upon a time fought against to dissolve a transitional government that came to power with a power-sharing agreement and trying to lead this country to transition, made so many achievements. Women have much more rights than they did before. The economy is improving. Sudan's been lifted out of the list of states sponsoring terrorism, the U.S. list of states sponsoring terrorism. All of that for people to just come and say, no, we don't think this government achieved anything, and now we want the military to take over and we'll transition. So it's something you can wrap your head around.
Let me just bring in the General. This is the General speaking on October the 26th. Salma, I'm going to play this to you, and I would really love you to respond. Here he is.
Prime Minister Abdullah Hamdok suggested an initiative in order to unify all parties, and we sat to discuss it with himself and the Freedom and Change Forces, who suggested an initiative, and we agreed on it. It had 6 points, but the Freedom and Change Forces refused to sit with us or even discuss the matter. They replied with a written document, including 9 or 10 points. In the second initiative, we told the Prime Minister that there must be a solution adopted by both sides. We said in our discussions with the Prime Minister that we need to speak to the political parties in order to extend the basis of participation, which we were discussing up until the day before yesterday.
Summer, what do you make of that explanation?
Yeah, I mean, for me, the first thing after listening to General Burhan is I immediately could detect that he's not calling it a coup d'etat. He denies to describe it. He thinks what he has done is a form of trying to save the revolution and try to bring the revolution back to the right path. And of course, he's talking a lot about his efforts. But despite all these tensions, which has been between the military and the civilian members of the government, I don't think this justifies this move that he did by dissolving the government and the constitutional declaration. And I think many Sudanese would agree with me with this. And we can see this obviously in the response of the Sudanese to the military coup by coming out to the streets and resisting it by all means, and using various tactics to just reject it and try to bring back their civilian government.
There is a mystery that happened earlier on this week, and that mystery is about the whereabouts of the Sudanese Prime Minister Abdullah Hamdok. Have a look here on my laptop, 2 tweets I want to share with you. I'm wondering whether Hibba can clear up the mystery. Family sources say that they can't reach the Prime Minister or his wife on the phone. We don't know what the circumstances are currently. And then this is the general again, General al-Burhan. He was saying that the Prime Minister was at his home, but worried that he would face harm. So he's now with me at my home. That's the General's home in the guest house. I was sitting with him last night. He's living life normally in the guest house of the General. Once threats or harm subsides, he can return to his home. Hibba, where is the Prime Minister of Sudan right now?
Well, residence under heavy security, so he is back home, but he's not, you know what I mean? He still can't talk freely to the media. There are diplomats who met him and spoke to him and checked on his health, but you know, we've been walking around in the streets and we've been talking to the people, and for them, the fact that they cannot see their prime minister the way they used to, him at events, you know, they know that his convoy is going to work, and so the security around the roads that he's taking, all of that is not there. So for them, he's just being moved from one house arrest to another, especially because of the way that the situation all unfolded. You know, there's an internet shutdown. So people didn't know initially where he was. They knew that from family members and from the statements coming from his office that he was at his home in the morning and in the early hours of Monday, and then he was taken by the military. And then Tuesday afternoon, that's when Burhan said, oh, well, he's with me because of grave threats and dangers. But then again, even if he's back in his residence right now, people are just not okay with the whole situation. The fact that, you know, he's under tight security, the fact that he can't move freely, and the fact that, you know, every single step he takes, every single move he makes right now, it's going to be controlled by the military until they form that transitional government affairs that Burhan has been talking about. So, yeah, it's just everything is just quite surreal, to be honest, Femi. You know, again, Sudan has.
If I may add to that, Hiba. Yeah, I think the fact that the people also didn't know the whereabouts of the Prime Minister, this was a source of great anger for the public. I mean, for many Sudanese were, of course, asking and worried about him, and this is especially that he represents kind of the symbol of the revolution for them. So. So many. It was really disturbing news for many Sudanese not to get to know where the prime minister is. And then when General Burhan mentioned that he's in his house, this was also a kind of a big surprise for the people. I mean, usually in the military coups, you can arrest the prime minister, put him in jail or in the prison or anything, but you cannot kind of kidnap him and keep him in your house. So this was a quite astonishing moment to hear the General Burhan talks about keeping the prime minister in his house. What do you think?
Hiba, if I may, I'm just going to jump in here. You mentioned that there was some difficulty with the internet connections, and we're still hearing that with the connection that we have with you. We hear you. It's a little bit tricky. Audience, thank you so much for your patience for that. Hiba, I'm going to move on a little bit because I don't want to spend the whole programme talking about the mystery of where is the Prime Minister and why can't we see him in Sudan. I know that's important, but there's some other thoughts for you. Salma, this is John on Twitter. He says the military, especially General Burhan, was never going to hand over leadership of the Sovereign Council to civilians in November. That was on the schedule, right? November was when the council civilians were going to take over, as it was supposed to be. The coup was expected. It was a matter of when. Salma is nodding your head. Articulate the nod, Salma. Go ahead.
I totally agree with John. This military coup is no surprise for many Sudanese who have been following the events on a daily basis. We have seen the tensions between the civilian and the military faction of the government. We have seen a lot of statements and counter statements. And it was also clear that General Burhan was fed up with the civilian government, and he's fantasizing to bring his own cabinet. And already now we hear a lot of news that he started to kind of select his own competent person who can fill the positions of the cabinet. Yeah, and yes, true. He didn't want to give up power and hand in the power to the civilians, as it was scheduled. Yeah.
Hiba, if I may, I'm just going to dip into your Twitter account, and you retweeted a comment from David Malpass. He's the head of the World Bank Group. The World Bank Group has paused disbursements in all of its operations in Sudan on Monday and stopped processing any new operations. I'm going to ask you, Hiba, why you shared that, but also via this comment, this question from one of our audience. Mesfin says, I do believe that Sudanese will solve the problems by themselves, no more interference of any countries at all. Bearing in mind the stopping of disbursements from the World Bank Group, and Mesfin saying, Sudan, we've got it, we can handle this, we don't need international interference. Hiba, thoughts?
Well, it's not an issue of international interference. The thing is, Sudan has been under economic and trade sanctions for more than 27 years, and it has had its impact on the economy. So the reason why I retweeted the David Malpass tweet is because, it comes at a time where the World Bank was providing financial assistance in the form of a program known as Family Support Program for the families with low income. And the Sudanese government had put out a statistics figures that basically said that more than 70% of the population, 43 million people, living below the poverty line. So that was quite significant. The fact that fuel subsidies have been lifted, the prices of bread and fuel and basic commodities have increased. The inflation is at figures, and that support, that World Bank support, was very crucial for many families. And with that halted, you're likely to see the number of families in need increase, and that's just one of the side effects of this military takeover. It's having diplomatic impacts. The African Union has suspended Sudan on Wednesday, but I think the biggest concern, and that's the reason why I tweeted that, is because I was trying to let people know that this is having an economic impact in the country. People outside will not be able to feel it, but it is definitely going to have an impact, and people will slide into poverty because of this.
General Burhan, sorry, Salma, you go first, I'll go second.
Yeah, if I may add just a little to this. I think also for many Sudanese people, it's very important that to see the international community support, that they back up their resistance of this military coup. So this kind of statements makes a lot of, it means a lot for many Sudanese. Also now, today, with also hearing a lot of Western countries and also like the African Union and many other international institutions that are backing up or condemning at least the military coup. That's important.
What difference does that make to you as somebody who's Sudanese, Salma? How does that make you feel? Does it help?
What can you?
Yeah, you're just listing the number of international organizations, bodies who are saying that this is a military coup and that the civilian arrangement, the power sharing agreement, should return as soon as possible. As somebody who is Sudanese watching what's happening to your country from outside of your country, go ahead.
Yeah, of course. I mean, many Sudanese realize that it is upon the Sudanese themselves to change their reality, and it is them who have to bring back their revolution and to bring back the civilian rule. But of course, Sudan is not an isolated country, and the pressure from the outside is crucial for these objectives to be realized, especially in resisting the military.
So the stream did ask General al-Burhan if he would be part of today's program. He didn't decide that he wanted to do that, but we have got a comment from him just earlier on in this week trying to understand the military perspective and why the takeover has happened. This is what he said on October the 25th.
A competent and independent government will take care of the country until the upcoming elections. It will be formed respecting and representing all Sudanese people.
So that was the general on October the 25th, and this was Ishmael, who is a journalist, just a few hours ago. Have a listen.
The military coup in Sudan on October 25th and the dissolvement of the Sovereignty Council is a big setback for the democratization process in Sudan following the December revolution. It raises fears that Sudan may be returning to this vicious cycle of civilian rule followed by military rule followed by a popular uprising. This is not to say that there are no legitimate criticisms of the performance of the transitional government in the past 2 years, but it also raises questions as to why the military thought it necessary to take such an action at this time, despite the declared positions of countries like the United States, and more importantly, the huge turnout of Sudanese protesters on October 21st, the anniversary of the October Revolution, indicating that the overwhelming majority of Sudanese will no longer accept military rule.
This is the question mark for many people watching from outside of Sudan here is, so now what happens? What will happen with the protesters who are out on the streets? I know that you were doing some of that reporting today. What are you seeing? What is the sense, the atmosphere that you're getting from them?
Resilience. Lots of resilience from people. That's one thing that is really very constant. People are still out on the streets. You see more and more barricades. I was actually quite shocked by the barricades I saw earlier because they were just a few meters away, not kilometers away, they were just like a few meters away. And protesters out on the streets, people are still chanting, and you can see, and you know that the military will come because the response since Monday has been very brutal. There are already people who have been killed. More than 100 people have been injured. So there's violence, and the resilience is there, and it seems like, again, we've seen on October 21st, hundreds of thousands of people around the country taking to the streets. And it seems like every single time the military or any side tries to take them a step back from that revolution, they come back with more zest, they come back with more energy. And I'm a bit surprised. I understand that the youth make up more than half of Sudan's population, and that they're the ones who led the revolution and everything. It still surprises me, and I don't think I'll ever get over it. How, despite all the violence, and when you look at the economic situation, despite the promises, better economic situations, promising to provide healthcare, education, everything that a lot of people would easily buy into because of the situation on the ground, you still see them saying no. We understand things are rough, but we want a civilian government. So Yeah, that's what I'm seeing. I'm seeing a lot of resilience, and I'm always in awe and shocked by what I am seeing the streets of Sudan.
Before I go to Sama, let me just bring in some of those voices. This is just last night in Sudan. These are some of the young protesters. Let's have a look.
The youth insists that there should be a civilian rule. Barricades are everywhere. This is one of the things that assure us that we are still committed to the streets, to our principles, and protecting the revolution.
The people are mobilizing by themselves because there is no internet, no phone communications. Nobody is leading us, not the Freedom and Change Forces or the Professionals Association. The people in the street are leading themselves. We are not removing the barricades because the military general Abdel-Fattah Burhan's speech was not convincing. We will protest on October 30th.
Sama, I'm seeing a lot of that defiance against the military on our YouTube comments as people are watching this show. I'm going to bring in one more voice and then I'm going to go right back to you. This is Hamid. He's a researcher and policy analyst. He's Sudanese.
Once again, the Sudanese people are showing the world incredible resilience and unbreakable determination to protect their revolution and to restore civilian rule in the country. The people of Sudan are out in the streets fighting peacefully without arms, only using their voices and protecting themselves by using barricades in the roads around their neighborhoods. However, the voices of the people of Sudan are being blocked from the world because internet services were shut down in the country. The world needs to come together and protect the people of Sudan and protect civilian rule and the revolution in Sudan. Military does not belong to government. Military should not be in power and should not be in charge. Support the Sudanese people.
Yeah, for me, I feel very proud when I hear the statements, especially from the young people in the streets who are resisting or facing a brutal military in the streets of Khartoum. They have been cut out from telecommunication, and there is a lot of pressure on them. Despite that, you can see them in high morale, and even they are much more calmer than us. For me personally, for example, I was so worried on the morning of the military coup. When I managed to call my family, it completely changed my morale, and I could feel the determination of the people to bring back their civilian government. So, as you could hear from the various reports, they are using various tactics, old and new tactics. So, especially protests in the streets and civil obedience, and now they are calling for this big protest on the 30th of October. And here I would like also to mention that even the Sudanese in the diaspora now are organizing similar protests in response and also in support of the protests in Sudan, which is quite also encouraging. Yeah.
Ladies, we've got about 1 minute left in our discussion today. It's not long enough to talk about what's happening in Sudan, but we got started. This is Dan. Dan has an epic question for you, and I want an instant response. Salma, you start. Dan says, do you think this coup will be reversed?
I think the people of Sudan are determined to stop this move by al-Burhan. And also they are very patient and using various tactics. At least it will not be easy. It will not be easy for the generals to take over the power, as the people will not accept this easily.
What a terrible question to ask a correspondent. Will this coup be reversed? I didn't ask the question. I'm just sharing it with you from Dan here, but go ahead.
I think just based on what I'm seeing on the streets and seeing from the people and hearing from them, there's going to have to be a way out. The military can't be in charge unless they're willing to use force against the people, and that's something I don't think either the people of Sudan or the international community would accept. So there's going to have to be a step taken back to be able to find a way out of this current situation.
Thanks, Hiba. All right, Hiba Morgan was one of our guests today. Have a look here on my laptop. I know you will see her work going forward. Let's get off the video, get back to my laptop. Here we go. Hiba Morgan on Twitter And Salma Abdullah was also our guest. Salma, Hiba, YouTube commenters, thank you so much for being part of today's program. Of course, the news about Sudan will continue on Al Jazeera. But for now, thanks for watching. See you next time. I don't think this sound is good enough to do a post show. What are you thinking?